What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be reviewing graphs, and basically reviewing how to construct a bar graph, a frequency polygon, and a pie chart from given some data. So here we've got a table of data. This is the daily oil production for countries in North America and South America for the year 2017. This is measured in thousands of barrels per day, and we've got our 5 countries here. And so what we want to first do is take this information and graph it for each of these countries. Draw a bar to represent each of these numbers. So we'll have to keep referring back to these numbers on top. So for Brazil, it was 3,336 barrels. So that's approximately here. So I'm going to draw a bar. And that would be for Brazil. Canada is at 4,986. So that's about halfway between here. Mexico is 2,260. So just a little bit above here. Maybe about here. US 15,599, so that's almost 16,000. So maybe about here. And in some books they call these histograms. Sometimes they're called column graphs. Just some different names for bar graphs. Venezuela is 2,174. So that's approximately here. And then other 2,498. So that's about here. And sometimes you won't see any gap between these bars. Sometimes you'll see a gap like we got drawn here. Now we're going to do the same thing, except when we're doing a line graph or a frequency polygon, instead of using bars, we're going to be putting dots. And then we're going to be connecting the dots. So here we're going to do the exact same thing, but now we have dots. So I'm going to have a dot for Brazil, a dot for Canada, a dot for Mexico, a dot for the US, a dot for Venezuela, and a dot for other. And then what we do is we literally connect the dots. Now the only thing we do at the end here is then we connect the ends to the bottom to make our frequency polygon. Now to make a circle graph or a pie chart, that's a little bit more complicated. Because the first thing we got to do is we got to total up these numbers here. And we're going to have to figure out the portion of circles that we're going to need here. So I'm just going to quickly add these numbers up. So that gives us 30,880. Now in order to figure out the percent for like Brazil, I'm going to take the oil production from Brazil, divide it by this number, and multiply by 100%. So if we do that, That gives us 0.1089 blah blah blah. Move the decimal point or multiply by 100, and that would give us about 10.9%. If we then take that number we got here, and if we remember that there's 360 degrees in a circle, if we multiply this by 360, that gives us about 39.2 degrees. So if we really wanted to get very accurate here, we could get a protractor and we can actually measure out these circles. So I'm going to do the same thing for Canada. I'm going to take the 4,986 divided by our total, which is 30,880. If I move the decimal point over, that's about 16.1%. Or multiply by 100, that does it too. And then I'm going to multiply that by 360. So that gives us about 58.1 degrees. And we'll do the same thing for Mexico. So that's about 7.3 degrees. Or percent, excuse me, 7.3%. Multiply by 360. And that will give us 26.3 degrees approximately. Just kind of rounding off to the nearest tenth here on each of these. And then we're going to do the US, which was the 15,599 divided by our total. So that's well, about 50.5%. Times it by 360. About 181.9%. Venezuela is 2,174. We're going to divide that by 30,880. So that's about 7%. And then with that 7%, we're going to multiply that by 360. And that will give us 25.3 degrees. And then finally, other category was 2,498. We're going to divide that by 30,880. So that's about 8.1 degrees. Sorry, 8.1%. Excuse me on that error. And then multiply by 360. So it'd be 29.1 degrees. So all we're doing there is we're first just figuring out the percentage. Once we have the percentage, we then go ahead and we calculate the degrees. So now I'm going to just kind of draw different sectors. I always like to start with the biggest one, which in this case is the US. So here's my center point. And US is a little bit more than half. So I'm just going to put the US right there. And yes, US is, well, if we round to the nearest percent, that'd be about 51%. Alright, so next I'm going to look at some of these others. I kind of look at Brazil and and Canada, those two together make about a quarter of the circle. So I'm going to go and put that here. Let me draw another line here. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. So I'm going to put Canada here. And it's about 16.1%. And then I'm going to put Brazil here. And Brazil would be about 10, or I guess we should round these off. So let's just say this is 16%, and this is about 11%. Because typically on these pie charts, they're going to have this percentage to the nearest whole number. Alright, so next we have kind of the three remaining, and they're roughly split into thirds. Not quite, but roughly into thirds. So I'm just going to kind of do this. Just kind of guesstimate this. Alright, so maybe this is other here at 8%. Maybe this one is Venezuela. And that's at 7%. And we have Mexico, which is about 7%. And again, if I wanted to get these more accurate, I would actually get a protractor and actually measured out these angles. Alright, let's try another example. So on this problem, we're looking at the number of days students went to a tutoring lab for a particular week. So we have 0 days, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and 5 days. Again, we're going to be kind of estimating here. So for 0 days, we have 95 students. All right, so I'm going to draw a bar graph that way, pretty close to 95. Then we have 135 for 1 day. So here's an example where I'm drawing it without any gaps. So there's no gaps for your columns. 2 days would be 300. Three days is 165, so about here. Four days be 120, so maybe about here. And 5 days would be 75. And that would give us our bar graph, sometimes called a histogram or a column graph. And remember, with the frequency polygon, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to be using dots. So I'm going to have a dot here at 95, a dot here at 135, a dot here at 300, a dot here at 165, a dot here at 120, and a dot here at 75. And we go and we connect the dots. And then we just connect the ends to the bottom here. For the circle graph or pie chart, again, we got to total these numbers up. So we're going to whip out our calculator. Go ahead and add those up. You should get 890. And to get our percentage then, we're going to be taking 95 divided by 890. And then multiplying by 100%. Or just move your decimal point over 2 places. So let's slide this over a little bit. So that's about 10.7%. We're going to multiply that by 360. And that's about 38.4 degrees. And then we're going to do 135 divided by 890. So that's about 15.2 degrees. Or I keep doing that, 15.2%, excuse me. And we're going to multiply by 360. So that's 54.6 degrees. Alright, then we're going to do that with 300. Divided by 890. So that's 33.7 degrees. Geez, sorry. That's 33.7%. Alright, I gotta stop doing these so early in the morning. Multiply by 360. That's 121.3 degrees. Let's do 165 divided by 890. So that's 18.5%. And then we're going to multiply that by 360. So that's 66.7 degrees. And then we're going to do the last two. 120 divided by 890. That's 13.5%. Multiplied by 360. And that's 48.5 degrees. And then finally the last one. 8.4% times 360. Now again, I like to do the largest portion first. So I'm going to look at this one up here. That's 33.7%. That's roughly 1/3 of our pie chart. So I'm going to go and I'm going to draw here. Here's my center. I'm going to just take about 1/3 of it. So I'm just going to take out that portion. So that would be 2 days. And well, if we round it off, that's about 34%. Now, if I look at these two here together, that's about 26%, so that's about 1/4. So I'm going to go and draw a line. And then I'm going to subdivide this. Alright, so I think that's the bigger one. Now let's see if I can draw a little bit more accurately. Let's make it a little bit more obvious. So this would be 1 day at 15.2 or 15% if we round that off. And then this would be 0 days, and that's about 11%. Okay, so now this is about 18.5%. That's almost 20%. So it's going to come out down here. This would be 3 days. We'll call that 19% when we round it. And then we have this 13 and 8. So I'll call that 14%, so that's 4 days. And 5 days, that would be about 8%. So that would be our pie chart. So, problem number 3, you're going to do exactly the same thing. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and pause this video, go ahead and work it out. Alright, so now that you've worked it out, again, the bar graph and the frequency polygons are pretty easy to do. You would just draw bars for each of those data values. And then go ahead and do your frequency polygon. The one that obviously takes a lot of work is doing the pie chart or circle graph. And so remember we're adding these numbers up to get a total of 666. I'm taking each of these numbers divided by 666, converting to a percent, and then multiplying by 360 to get the degrees. And so then to do our graph, if I look at these two chunks here, that's roughly half of my pie chart, a little bit over 50%. So let me just kind of split this thing in half. And so this one here is a little bit more than twice as big as the other one, so I'm going to draw my line going down here. So this is my range here, 48 to 57. The percentage here would be 35%. And this other one is 38 to 47. And that's about 16%. Now I'm going to look at these two here. And these two together, they're almost 25%. So they're about a quarter. So I'm going to take this segment here. And these are pretty close. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. So I draw this sector a little bit bigger. So this would be my 28 to 37. That's about 13% when we round that. And then this would be 18 to 27. And that's at 11%. And then this is going to occupy my last quarter. And this one's quite a bit bigger than the other one, so I'm going to draw it this way. This is my 58 to 67 at 18%. And this last one is 68 to 77 at about 7%. And so that would then give us our circle graph.